Vondrousova has been banned for 4 years because she missed a doping test at the end of last year. She's actually come out with a statement.
The most confusing thing about tennis's doping rules right now is not that Marketa Vondrousova got 4 years. It's not even that Jannik Sinner got 3 months. It's that almost everyone arguing about it is comparing two different crimes as if they were the same one before. You assume this is outrage content. It isn't. Every number here comes straight from the ITIA's own rulings and the World Anti-Doping Code, not a comment section. Start with the system everyone is angry at. The tennis anti-doping program runs on 2 separate articles. Article 2.1 covers a positive test, a substance found in the body. Article 2.3 covers a refused test, an athlete who doesn't give a sample when an officer shows up. Both start from the same 4-year baseline. That's the part almost no analyst is saying clearly. The 4 years was never a punishment invented for Vondrousova. It's the default for refusal, written that way so a player can't dodge testers and call it a lighter sentence than getting caught. Here's where it stops being theory. On December 3rd, 2025, a doping control officer arrived at Vondrousova's home around 8 p.m. for an out-of-competition test. She didn't open the door. She left to walk her dog and signed a refusal form instead. That single sentence, the one with the dog and the door, is the entire case. Not a missed call, not a paperwork error, a documented, signed refusal. Now name the crack, because there is one, and it's not where most fans are pointing. The system doesn't ask whether a player doped. It asks whether the player gave compelling justification for refusing to be tested. That's a legal bar, not a scientific one. Sinner and Swiatek had chemistry on their side trace clostebol, a contamination claim trimetazidine, a contamination claim substances a lab can measure, and a tribunal can weigh against fault. Vondrousova had psychology, an acute stress reaction, an anxiety diagnosis she has since disclosed, and a fear she traced back to the 2016 knife attack on her countrywoman Petra Kvitova. A lab result is something a tribunal can grade on a scale. A fear response is something a tribunal has to believe or doesn't. This mirrors something tennis has already lived through. Simona Halep was handed that same 4-year starting point after testing positive for roxadustat. Her team, led by anti-doping lawyer Howard Jacobs, fought it down on appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in 2024. That same lawyer, Jacobs, is now representing Vondrousova. The pattern isn't doping bans are random. The pattern is that the 4-year number is a starting line, not a verdict, and the real fight happens at CAS, months later, far from the headlines that already moved on. And here's what nobody's connecting yet. Vondrousova's case doesn't hinge on the substance question. At all, it hinges on whether an unannounced tester properly identified herself outside an agreed testing window. That's a procedural detail, not a competitive one. If the tribunal had found the officer's conduct deficient, this becomes a different story entirely, not about Vondrousova's fear, but about ITIA process failures. The next appeal isn't about her body, it's about the doorbell. Her public response tells you which fight she's choosing. Sinner settled quietly, accepted the 3 months, and was back on tour before most fans noticed he'd left. Vondrousova went to Instagram with a long emotional statement, naming the stress, naming the diagnosis, naming Kvitova. That's not just grief, that's strategy. A 4-year ban that can end a career needs public sympathy in a way a 3-month settlement never did. Now, here's the honest case against this thesis. Tennis's testing program exists because athletes could be tempted to dodge a tester the moment they suspect a result might come back dirty, and if refusal carried a lighter penalty than a positive test. That loophole would swallow the whole system. ITIA chief executive Karen Morehouse said it plainly. A player can't end up better off refusing a test than failing one. That logic is sound. But here's why I still hold the position a rule can be logically consistent and still land hardest on the player whose violation is the toughest to prove and the easiest to sympathize with. Now let's zoom out. This isn't only Vondrousova's story. Tara Moore, a British doubles player, has been fighting a 4-year ban since 2022 over a contaminated meat claim cleared once, then resuspended after an ITIA appeal in 2025. She's still out. The thread connecting Moore, Halep, and now Vondrousova is the same. The hardest cases to win are the ones without a clean chemical answer. Now imagine this scenario. Vondrousova's CAS appeal lands sometime in 2027. The panel doesn't clear her outright but cuts the ban down, citing the same fault-based reasoning that worked for Halep. She returns to tour in her late 20s, ranking reset to 0, on a tour that's crowned new Wimbledon champions since she last lifted that trophy. That's not a comeback story anymore. That's an entirely different career, restarted from a different floor. Look at the actual math. 3 months, 48 months. That's roughly a 16 times gap Between the two punishments, not a difference in degree, a difference in category. Vondrousova's ban runs until June 21st, 2030, by which point she'll be around 30 years old. Halep sat under that same 4-year number before her appeal cut it down. These aren't just harsh numbers, they're the fingerprints of a rule built to close one loophole, even while it opens another. So here's my prediction, and I'm being specific. Vondrousova's 4-year ban gets reduced on appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to 2 years or less, in a ruling delivered before the end of 2027. Not a feeling, a documented call you can check against the date stamp on this video. Go back to the door, an officer knocking at 8 p.m., a player who didn't open it, a dog walk that became a 4-year sentence. Now you know it was never really about whether she opened that door fast enough. It was about which article of the rulebook her name landed under, written long before anyone knew her name would be the test case. If the panel upholds the full 4 years instead, that's a fair correction to make, and we'll own it. But if the reduction comes the way I think it will, remember where you heard it first. Because we don't chase narratives here, we build them from the ground up.